Today we're going to be mixing together Arctic Fox in the color Frosé with Cosmic Sunshine. You may notice that my swatches are labeled 1 through 12. I just want to say that is not synonymous with hair levels. I do different video clips and pictures and such near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch. I also want to say that these are human hair swatches, but they are not virgin hair. The only one that will be virgin is the number 4 black swatch. Otherwise, the rest have been chemically colored, bleached, or treated at some point in their existence. 1 is green, 2 is a very cool toned gray, 3 is a natural red, 4 is black, and then 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So with my mix videos, I usually do 2 separate mixes so we can see like a bit of a range on what we can get with these colors. And I usually like to start with the top being a little bit darker. Now with this mix in particular, I don't know if that's going to work out perfectly well, but we're gonna start with my more pinky mix, and that is going to be a 60:1 ratio. I know it sounds like a lot. It's going to be 1 part of Cosmic Sunshine to 60 parts Frosé. I use really small parts, and that's why I'm able to get such a large number. For something like this, for both mixes I'm actually going to do, I recommend just starting with a base of Frosé and then adding the smallest bit of Cosmic Sunshine at a time, because Cosmic Sunshine is very, very pigmented. Also, please keep in mind everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. So please just use this video as a reference for what this could possibly turn out like for you. For the second mix, we're gonna do a 36:1 ratio. So that'll be 1 part of the Cosmic Sunshine again to 36 parts Frosé. So if you couldn't tell, I'm actually trying to go for a slightly more rose gold vibe with this mix. Looking at the other mixes for Arctic Fox, some of the lighter ones I noticed you have to dilute. So I really wanted to try making a mix where you didn't have to dilute it. And even though you don't have to dilute it, I will say the Cosmic Sunshine is so pigmented that it creates an orange very easy. I started with a 4:1 ratio, and that gave kind of like a nice marigold kind of color. And then the more pink you add, the more it goes to orange, and then to peach, and then obviously gets gradually more pink. So depending on the look that you want, you can kind of alter what you're going for. I know some people, when they say rose gold, they mean like a very pinky color. I think of a little bit more of a peachy color, so hopefully this helps anyone else looking for a rose gold as well. But I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours just so the color can fully absorb into the hair. I will then rinse it out, and when they're dry, I'll meet you back here and we'll do some comparisons. I'm quite happy with how this turned out. I will say I was a little bit worried when I first did this because the Cosmic Sunshine is so pigmented. I was worried that the mix was going to look just straight up orange no matter what I did. But I'm happy to see that it is on the peachy side, which is the goal. So I kind of mentioned it earlier, but the reason I picked Frosé and Cosmic Sunshine this time is because I wanted a mix that I didn't have to dilute, but I wanted it to still have a little bit more pigment. I feel like Frosé, depending on your hair, might not be as pigmented, and adding in the Cosmic Sunshine that is pigmented, I do feel like kind of helped to make the mix a little bit more pigmented. Now, that being said, because my swatches are not virgin hair, colors like this will stick to it better. So if you have virgin hair, I would say do a strand test for sure, because especially if your hair is a little bit darker and it's virgin hair, there's a way less chance of it actually taking to the hair. And if it does take, it may just wash right out. The other thing I had in mind when I was making this mix is that it would be better for like lighter blonde hair but not quite platinum, which would be kind of in the 9 or 10 area. I think I personally like the top half a little bit more with the more Frosé, but the bottom half that's a little bit more orangey definitely does look a little bit more pigmented, and it's definitely preference as well. I do like it on number 11. It's just not quite as rose gold as I would imagine for like a lighter blonde. But if you wanted something that's a little bit more peachy for your blonde hair, this would be a really good mix for that. So number 1 was originally green. I don't really think this covered very well. I definitely think you would need a much more pigmented mix or color to cover green. It kind of just has a bit of patchiness to it, probably because the color wasn't taking very well to the green. And the spots that did take have a kind of brownish look. 2 was the cool toned gray. That one is really interesting because, while I say this in a lot of my videos, it doesn't look natural per se. Compared to something like number 11, it almost has a natural-ish look. It almost looks like a more neutral version of maybe like number 9 or 8. Definitely still has warmth to it, but not quite to the intensity that the lighter swatches do. I will say that the top half, it definitely has a little bit more pink coming through than I see on the swatches over here. So essentially any colors that you use over gray usually will look a little bit more cool toned than they would on like a platinum blonde, for example. 3 was the natural red. That was a slightly darker natural red. And so I don't see a huge difference. I think very similar to how it often turns out when I use like peaches and pinks over natural reds. It kind of just makes the red look a little bit more vibrant, but I wouldn't say it changes the undertone drastically, both on the top and the bottom. Number 4 was the jet black. I absolutely see no difference on there. I also don't really see a difference on number 5. If there's any change, you'd probably would have to see that in direct sunlight. Unfortunately, I live somewhere where it's been very cloudy lately, so I won't have any direct sunlight to compare this to, but I wouldn't really recommend this particular mix for darker hair anyways. 6, there might be a slight difference. I think I see a little bit more warmth, but overall still looks pretty brown. 7, I would say, is where you really start to see the undertone differences. It still looks more brown compared to the lighter swatches, but there's definitely a little bit more of a peachy undertone. And then I think 8 and onward, it starts to look more like the rose gold. Now, it can definitely depend on your hair in particular, but I would say the darker the hair is, the more Cosmic Sunshine you'd probably want to have, since that one's a little bit more pigmented than the Frosé. You can still see the top mix on number 8, but I just think the bottom looks a little bit more saturated, but maybe you would like the less saturated look. And then number 12 usually has a kind of similar idea to number 2, where it's more cool toned than the blonde. So the color will always look a little bit more cool toned, just not as cool toned as number 2. Definitely see that here. Both the top and the bottom just lean a little bit more on the pink side. But I will say that cool tones tend to not reflect light as well, so they can automatically look a little bit darker. So number 12 does look a little bit darker than, say, like number 11. So just keep that in mind when doing things like this. As for comparisons, I have one color that is considered a rose gold, so I figure we'll start with that one. So this is going to be Iroiro in the color rose gold. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So looking at the Iroiro color, I feel like that one was actually probably intended for blonde hair, because I feel like looking at the direct eye portion on the platinum blonde, that is a little bit more what I personally would picture to be a rose gold for platinum blonde. And then as you look at these slightly darker swatches, you do see a little bit of a difference, you know, compared to like the diluted section, but our mix is a little bit more pigmented, I think. So if you're looking for something that's better for more platinum blonde, I think this would be good. But keep in mind, it's also much more warm in undertone. It's not going to be as pink as my mix. It almost kind of gives me dreamsicle vibes on the platinum blonde. On 9 and 10 and the tone swatch as well, it seems to lean a little bit more pink, which is interesting. That could be because of the undertone of the hair. Platinum blonde can sometimes lean a little bit more yellow, and that's something to keep in mind too. If your hair lightens much more yellow in undertone than my swatches, the colors will always lean a little bit more warm, and that can also make it look brighter as well. The other comparison I wanted to look at today is Uberliss, I'm not sure, in the color Peach Hydrangea. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So interestingly, I thought these were a little bit more similar when I was comparing them. So right off the bat, I would say the peach hydrangea leans a little bit more pink and definitely darker than my mix. It's funny because when it's not under this light and it's kind of in regular house lighting, they look a lot more similar. So if you are going for the rose gold kind of vibe, I think the peach hydrangea would be less likely to kind of give you that look, unless this is how you picture rose gold, of course. On 9 and 10, it's definitely darker than my mix. It's also darker on number 11 as well, but because the swatch underneath is so bright, the color also looks pretty bright in comparison. Even when you dilute it, it still has quite a bit of brightness as well. But then on the darker swatches, it seems like it didn't take as well. So you could always maybe dilute it less than I did, especially if you do like the slightly more bright pink vibe that you get from the peach hydrangea. And it's hard to say because everyone's hair is different, of course, but it does kind of seem like the peach hydrangea could be a little bit more pigmented. So if your hair is a little bit more resistant, something like this could be good as well. So now I'd like to look at our before and after clips. Those, as well as anything after this point in the video, will all be done in natural lighting. And because I do use natural lighting, that means I have to film on different days, which means the lighting environment outside can change. So if the before and after clips look different, that is why. I hope my video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so very, very much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.